now become our traditional 5-minute countdown.
What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing tonight? It's good to be back. How are you doing, David?
Good evening, sir. Ready to talk some football after a little bit of a hiatus here. How are things with you?
Pretty good, pretty good. For you guys who don't know, I started my own landscaping business, and for the first month, I've been crazy busy nonstop.
Well, I mean, that's what you wanted, isn't it? I mean, that's why you make as much money as possible.
Yes, but I didn't expect it to happen this fast. I thought it was going to be a progress. I didn't expect it to be like boom.
Well, it's the right time of year, you know. I mean, everybody's getting rain, and so it's growing up a storm probably, about every 2 weeks. Somebody's got to get their yard mowed, and if you got, people wanting you to come back, each time, it is probably pretty crazy.
Yeah, I got like 22 accounts already.
That's good. Well, let's talk some football, buddy. I mean, we've been out of the loop here for a little bit, but one of the main things that I was thought about focusing on when it comes to news and notes around the NFL is the wide receiver market. You guys kind of started it off a little bit. You re-signed Amon-Ra St. Brown. You got him with a real nice, I would call it a team-friendly contract, especially considering some of the numbers that have been coming out over the last couple of weeks. The 49ers, re-signed Jawan Jennings. You had Jalen Waddle re-signed with the, re-upped and got a contract extension with the Miami Dolphins. Everybody's trying to get their contracts in and done in a big hurry because they knew, and I think we all know, that once Justin Jefferson got his contract, the dollar figures are going to be astronomical, and now the 49ers are kind of screwed when it comes to Brandon Ayuk.
Yep.
The Cincinnati Bengals, are going to have trouble with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. There are some other, players out there. Of course, Tyreek Hill mentioned that he'd like to get an extension, even though he claimed he was going to retire at the end of the contract that he is in. He's looking for more money, but then he says, on one end, he says he wants more money. On the other end, he says, oh, well, but I don't want to be greedy. It's too late. Your greed done cost you 2 Super Bowl championships by going to Miami. There's a lot of other players out there that are going to be looking to get paid, and they're going to want to set the market and get more money than what's already been out there.
This is what I call it. Brad Holmes being a fucking genius again. Because when we signed St. Brown was the highest wide receiver in the NFL. We knew if Minnesota re-signed Justin Jefferson, the contract was going to be crazy. And way up there, same with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Ayuk. So that's just, once again, the Lions being very smart. Just like they did with Jared Goff. They got him signed. They got St. Brown signed. And guess what? We still have like almost $50 million in cap room. Detroit's still not broke.
Yeah, I mean, you guys re-signed all of your, I would call it like your core components, the ones that you needed to sign. Their contracts are coming up. And that's the best way to prevent a franchise from getting caught, kind of with their pants down, by just waiting around. Well, we don't have to pay them yet, so let's not do it. And that's what's caused the Dallas Cowboys, I think, to go, downhill. They're going to be going downhill big time over the next couple of years. Dak Prescott wants, $60 million or whatever. Micah Parsons probably deserves to be the highest paid defensive player in the NFL. That's going to cost him a pretty penny. CeeDee Lamb's looking for a new contract. And so, they've got a team that I will call it's really at a crossroads when it comes to Dallas. They've got a veteran team that is also young. But all the veterans want to get paid, and the young guys are coming up, and they're going to want to get paid. And, it just feels like they may have to blow it all up and start over, in Dallas because of the quarterback situation. You look at these other teams, we talked about, Brandon Ayuk and the 49ers. He's looking for a better contract. He did not report to OTAs, but they re-signed, Jawan Jennings, to a team-friendly deal. They drafted Ricky Pearsall, and so there's been a lot of talk about them possibly trading Ayuk, maybe trading Deebo Samuel, because they're not going to be able to afford everyone. Brock Purdy's contract is going to be coming up soon, and he's going to have to get paid like an elite quarterback. They went
especially if he has another solid year, and you know what I mean? Because let's be honest, I'm not I don't think they'll go back, but I'm definitely not counting them out as the 49ers. To me, they're one of the 5 teams that have a shot at the Super Bowl of the NFC.
Oh, they're one of the favorites for sure. And he is not just a facilitator. People want to call him a game manager. You know who was a game manager? Joe Montana. You know who's a game manager? Tom Brady. Okay? This guy isn't. I'm not calling this guy Joe Montana. I'm not calling him Tom Brady, but he's a game manager, and that's fine. The system fits him. The players around him fit him. He's got good coaching, and everybody wants to trash him because he was the last pick in the draft. Hey, Tom Brady wasn't picked till the 6th round. Kurt Warner was an undrafted free agent. These guys are Super Bowl champions, and this guy could very well be one within the next couple of years. He's going to get paid. And the quarterback is the most important person on the team. They're not going to be able to afford to pay Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel or both. And so, one of them's either going to have to take a discount or will get traded. They may be able to sign him to something to get him through this year. But not, coming up next year, it's going to be a situation because he doesn't have a big, long contract because of where he was drafted. They can't give him the old, 5th-year option, and if they place the franchise tag on him, that's $40 million. Bam, just like that,
Here's the thing, too, is I think that's this game manager shit term is stupid anyway. Because, Tom Brady managed the game. Same thing with Joe Montana. But guess what? That's the quarterback's job, is to actually manage the game. That's why the quarterback is the main one. Honestly, let's say the main person on the offense, because without the quarterback, your offense doesn't work properly. We all see it happen. I mean, look at how many times quarterbacks get hurt, and look how those teams finish. It just don't happen for nothing. I mean, so to me, game managers, that's the quarterback's job. You got Lamar Jackson, type quarterbacks. Yeah, they can make a big play. His job is still managing the game. He does that because he runs a lot, which does what, David? It takes time off the clock.
Well, and not only that, okay, when you look at a dynamic player like a Lamar Jackson, talk about Michael Vick in years past, when they don't manage the game and they try to take over, that backfires on them.
Yep.
If you look happened in the AFC Championship game this last year, Baltimore and Kansas City. Baltimore was a running team all year long. They mixed in plenty of pass because their running game was so dynamic. and they play the AFC Championship game. Let's put the ball completely in the hands of Lamar Jackson, and it did not work. They tried to go against their tendencies, perhaps, but the Chiefs were a team that, struggled against the run, and they've struggled against the run for years, and they didn't go to their bread and butter. Baltimore could have easily gone to the Super Bowl last year and faced the 49ers, and, their game plan wasn't sound. They put the ball in the hands of their dynamic playmaker. They expected him to take over the game, and it didn't work for him. So when it comes to the game manager, you have to be in a position where you can be smart, make the right calls, make the right audibles, get people in position to make the plays that they need to make, and it reminds me, and I'm not calling, once again, not saying that Brock Purdy, is one of these people. But Peyton Manning, he'd go up to the line and let me change the call over here and move this guy over here and do this and that. If you've got somebody that's capable of doing those things, I consider that person a field general more, but he is managing the game. He's making sure that his team is in the best position to win, and that's really what you're looking for from any quarterback in the league.
Yeah. So, also, sorry, I'm having a brain fart. I was just thinking of something I heard. Oh, so what color? So here's my curiosity here. The game in Brazil.
Yeah.
They're really talking about both teams can't wear green. Here's my question, though.
Yeah.
What the fuck is Philly going to wear? Because I know they have black, but it still has green borderline. So
first of all, okay, I don't think when they have their uniforms on and they're in the stadium, it's all about wearing, stuff outside the facility. Okay? Wearing things outside the facility, I think that they take this way too seriously. People are talking about the gangs. The gangs are just football fans. They call them hooligans. Okay? They're football fans of soccer football, and, they don't want nobody wearing the other team's colors in their stadium or in their city, or whatever the case may be. This is not soccer. We're playing American football there. I don't think there's going to be any issues. If they really want, to avoid any problems, then, Philadelphia will wear black jerseys. Green Bay will wear yellow and white jerseys. And, they'll have alternates. So they'll have, what do they call it? Color rush, type jerseys. And, they'll have alternate helmets or whatever they have to do, to appease whoever they need to appease. I don't think there's going to be any problems. I know that this is a big, talking point. Everybody's, it's giving everybody clicks and something to talk about. That the NFL would not set this game up in Brazil if they wasn't confident that they could protect their players, they could protect all of the staff and personnel that's going to be going to Brazil to play in Sao Paulo. I'm really looking forward to the first Friday night game. I know it's a streaming situation, but you know what? I've got a stream. I've got Peacock. I'm not worried about it. If somebody wants to watch the game, they'll find a way to watch it. There's a lot of pirating and stuff online that you can get to that you can, watch the game if you want to. And so, but yeah, I'm looking forward to the game. I think it's going to be a great early season matchup. And Philadelphia is actually one of the teams that I want to talk about tonight because, I've got some spotlights here. And let me get this set up here real quick. to spotlight some teams that have had a lot of things happen for them this offseason. And so Philadelphia is on the list tonight of one of the teams that has had, what I will call a big offseason. And it really started at the end of last year, Chris, when the Philadelphia Eagles began the season in the driver's seat. They're coming off a Super Bowl, where they lose a close game to the, Kansas City Chiefs. And, now everything looks like it's going to be great and that they're going to be able to, go back to the Super Bowl, and suddenly they fall apart. They fall apart because, we're not really sure what it is, but I always thought it was because of the coordinators. Okay. You've got a coordinator problem in Philadelphia. They lost their offensive coordinator to become head coach in Indianapolis. They lost their defensive coordinator to become head coach in Arizona. They had some people on staff that took over those positions, but perhaps they were not ready, to be in those positions. And, they were kind of in cruise control early on, and then they hit this slide at the end of the year and could never recover. So in the offseason, they added new coordinators. They brought Vic Fangio back, who had been with Miami. He was a consultant, actually, for that team that went to the Super Bowl. And so they're going to know that defense. He's going to know them. And they've done some work in the offseason to improve that side of the ball, because that side of the ball really is the side that let them down last year. And then offensively, they bring in Kellen Moore, who they know from his days with the Dallas Cowboys. He ran the Dallas Cowboy offense for several years under both Jason Garrett and Mike McCarthy. Last year, he spent the season with the LA Chargers, and they had some success there, but obviously did not make the playoffs. And so they bring them in, and we've got a lot of what I will call transactions that have occurred, okay? They changed their backup quarterback. Marcus Mariota is gone. In comes Kenny Pickett. They let DeAndre Swift go to the Bears. They bring in Saquon Barkley, which I think is going to be a huge addition for this team. Wide receiver Quez Watkins leaves. They bring in Paris Campbell. They tried to add Devontae Parker from New England and also Miami over the last several years. But unfortunately, he decided to retire. They lost Jack Stoll at tight end. They bring in C.J. Uzomah. Offensive line, we all know that Jason Kelsey has retired. They had a guy on staff to come in who was playing guard. He's going to move to center. That may affect the tush-push, if you will. But they added Mekhi Becton, who's had some struggles, but is a, starter at tackle from the New York Jets, comes in to play for the Eagles. They also got Bryce Huff. They picked up Devin White from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, of course, he was with Detroit last year. He comes back to Philadelphia after a year away. They shipped off Hassan Reddick. Fletcher Cox retired. A couple of linebackers are gone. And so looking at this team, Chris, what stands out to you when it comes to the additions and the subtractions? I am really impressed with the draft that they had. I love that they brought in some quality players in both the first and second round in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. And I think that Philadelphia is going to rebound this year.
I think Barkley is a huge pickup for this team. Devin White, I think, is an even bigger pickup for this team. I've always loved Devin White as a linebacker. The dude is a beast. He plays hard. He don't get hurt very often. CJ Garner Johnson, I mean, he's not a crappy pickup. He's a good player. I liked him when he was with the Lions to a certain extent. I didn't like his big mouth. To me, he's too worried about talking shit and doing rapping sometimes than worried about playing football. But Minnesota definitely has the ability to bounce back as long as obviously the key players stay healthy all year, and if they have the locker room situation fixed.
Well, I know that you were concerned about A.J. Brown and the things that he had to say last year. I don't know if he was a catalyst for some of the behind-the-scenes problems, or was he just voicing what he saw happening and nothing was getting done, to make the changes?
Yeah.
But, you look here at their 2024 schedule, okay? Obviously, we talked about them playing against Green Bay in Brazil on the opening Friday night in Sao Paulo. They've got a home game 10 days later, so they got plenty of time to get home, and get to, play against, or it's actually 11 days to play against the Atlanta Falcons on a Monday Night Football. I think that'll be a nice homecoming for them. A lot of people are talking about how Atlanta is going to be a lot better this year, but there's no guarantee that, you're going to have Kirk Cousins actually starting by then. He's still recovering from that torn Achilles. And then they go on the road for a couple of weeks before they have an early season bye. They're at New Orleans, which I think will be an improved team. Tampa Bay, Tampa Bay is the team that knocked them off in the playoffs. And so, they may have revenge on their mind early, but they do not have what I would call, an easy schedule. They're playing against the likes of Cleveland and Cincinnati. They got to go to Dallas, which is normal, but all the way across the country at the Rams. They play close to home at Baltimore, but Baltimore, we know how tough they can be. Pittsburgh. And so, I still think that they're going to have a really good season. I expect them to win the NFC East. We were talking, earlier in the year, a couple of weeks ago when we had, our preseason kind of little predictions and everything. And I think I had them winning 12 games. So, that's our spotlight on Philadelphia for this particular time. What anything else to say about Philadelphia coming into this next season?
I just know they're going to be good. I think they're going to be good. I'm not going to lie. They're a team I'm worried about. I mean, you cannot not worry about them. So I'm curious to see how this game in Brazil goes against Green Bay. And I'm curious to see how they look week one.
Yeah, for me, I think that if they play good, okay, if everything works out with the coordinators and everybody's on the same page, obviously expect them to win the division. I think they're still one of the top 4 teams in the NFC if everything comes together for them.
I could definitely see that for sure, 100%.
The next team that I want to talk about has been the darlings of the offseason. Everybody's talking about how they're going to be the team. They've done so much in the offseason here to bolster their team after winning the division narrowly last year. Houston Texans. We talked about, them making the right choice. Bryce Young ended up with Carolina. I think that they kind of talked Carolina into taking Bryce Young. because they wanted C.J. Stroud from the get-go. And this is a team, and we were talking about wide receivers. They signed Nico Collins to a nice little deal before Justin Jefferson got his. So they're getting ahead of things here, with Houston to make sure that they're going to be okay. And of course, they're playing under the rookie contract, of C.J. Stroud right now, so they don't have to worry about paying him big money. Now, they lost Devin Singletary. He leaves the team, and he goes to the New York Giants. They traded for Joe Mixon, which I think is a big move. They're going to pair him with Dameon Pierce. They're going to try and improve their running game, which was not as good as the passing game last year, which was a surprise to a lot of people, that they were able to really air it out. A lot of no-name wide receivers on the team. That will not be the case this year. Everybody knows who Nico Collins is now, Tank Dell, and then, of course, they traded for Stephon Diggs, who was, he led the Buffalo Bills in receptions and touchdowns. They pair him with Nico Collins, who led Houston in reception and touchdowns. Both guys had over 1,100 yards. They both scored 8 touchdowns apiece. The offense, I think, is really going to go to the next level if C.J. Stroud continues to mature even after this first year.
Yeah.
Now, Houston, they, I don't know what they've done with their offensive line. They lost some offensive linemen. I think they may have drafted some guys, but according to everything I saw, they did not really bring in any depth on the offensive line to help protect C.J. Stroud. What they did do is they worked on their defense. They brought in quite a few players from a lot of different teams to try and help give themselves some pass rush. They basically traded, defensive end Jonathan Greenard with Minnesota to take Danielle Hunter from Minnesota, And then, they lost Blake Cashman to Minnesota. They bring in Azeez Al-Shahir, who I believe he comes from Detroit, doesn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, Jeff Okudah. You said Jeff Okudah?
Old buddy Jeff Okudah, who used to be in Detroit by way of Atlanta. They bring him in, C.J. Henderson, in the back end. And so DeMeco Ryans, the head coach, is trying to bolster a defense that played decently enough in their first year to help them get that, Division I in what we all thought was really going to be a really weak division behind Jacksonville. And they ended up just edging Jacksonville last year in the division. The interesting one here for me, of course, as a Chiefs fan, is they added punter Tommy Townsend, to help with their special teams. He's a really good holder, and with the way that the kickoff rules are now this year, we may see, players like punters doing some kickoffs because a lot of the kickers are not used to, what do I want to call it? Both directional and, kicking the ball in certain areas. They want to get the ball now in the kickoffs in the target zone, which is between the 20 and the end zone. Okay, so that it will allow for returns. If you kick it out the back of the end zone, the team's going to start at the 40-yard line this year. And
are you kidding me?
A lot of talk of, place kickers not necessarily going to be the kickoff specialists this year. It could be punters. It could be other players because they're worried about people having to tackle. There is no second line of defense if somebody breaks through that opening line. Okay? If they get through that opening line of blockers and tacklers, it's just the kicker, punter, or whoever's back there. Kansas City's talked about possibly using their safety, Justin Reed. We've heard, Baltimore's talked about Harrison, or not Harrison Butker, but Justin Tucker is working on possibly bulking up to be prepared to be a tackler in the event that we have players break through that line. And so Tommy Townsend coming to Houston is an interesting pickup for me. I like what they have done. Here you look at the rookies that they picked up. The two impact rookies in my mind, they're still trying to have a real good secondary. So they bring in Kamari Lassiter. He is kind of a steal. A lot of people think that, he had first round talent. But, we've talked with a lot of people, including Jeremy, who said, there's so many good corners that it didn't matter whether you took them in the first round or the fourth round, you were going to get the same kind of quality players. But Cade Stover, the tight end, will pair well. He comes from Ohio State, so he knows C.J. Stroud, and he'll pair well with Dalton Schultz if they run a lot of double. He's a good blocker, but also a pretty good receiver. What do you think about the moves that have been made by the Houston Texans, Chris?
Really strong. I mean, honestly, to me, KC really has to worry about the Texans. I think they're going to be that good this year. I mean, they were so good last year, out of nowhere, pretty much. And now adding all this in the first offseason after the last season is crazy. It's almost like I almost feel like I'm watching baseball right now. Like a baseball offseason with how much moves they pulled off.
I look at the losses that they have on the team, and there's some pretty good names on there. And, when you make a lot of moves in the offseason, one of the things that you got to worry about as a general manager or head coach is the chemistry. Malik Collins, Sheldon Rankins, leaving. Blake Cashman was an impact player for them defensively. They just didn't want to pay him. Okay. And, they didn't want to pay, Jonathan Greenard either, but because Danielle Hunter was an older player, but still, high impact, they could get him on a better deal coming over from Minnesota. And so, I think some of these moves that they made were for monetary considerations, not necessarily for, keeping their best players. They had to let some of them go because they tried to price themselves out of the range. They're like, oh, we won the division and we're getting better. You need me to stay here. I want so-and-so amount of money. And they're like, well, it's only our first year with the new coordinators, the new head coach, the new quarterback. We want to see what we can build here, but we don't want to break the bank, to try and keep a team together that last year didn't do anything. We added some people in here, and suddenly we're doing well. It's more on the lines of the coaching in their minds than it is some of the players. And I think that's why they made some of these moves.
Yeah. I don't blame them. Their window hasn't even completely opened yet. I think they're kind of forcing the window open right now. But to me, that's smart. Why are you going to break the bank after the first year when technically your window hasn't opened yet, but you're forcing it open?
Yeah, and I agree with you that I think that this is a team that is definitely going to challenge, Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC. I think that they're a force to be reckoned with. But I think that, last year, that division, I really felt like that division struggled. Jacksonville had a down year. Indianapolis was playing with a backup quarterback, and they had an okay year, but it was because of the division and the schedule that they were playing, and then you look at Tennessee. Tennessee was not good. They're going to be much better this year. Tennessee is going to be better. I think Jacksonville's going to rebound. It'll be interesting to see what Indianapolis does because they're going to be getting, Andy Richardson back now. And we have seen in his first year that he is prone to get injured, between either physically or mentally, with concussions. We have, there's some concerns in Indianapolis. I'm really surprised that they let, Gardner Minshew leave. I think that they're hedging their bets with Joe Flacco being the backup quarterback in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And they're going to play him right out of the gate. They're going to play him right out of the gate. Houston goes to Indianapolis in week 1. And they have, they've got an okay schedule. It's not too, overly loaded with the heavy-hitting teams. At Green Bay will be interesting. They have to play Detroit, but they get Detroit at home in Houston. At Dallas on Monday night could be a real interesting game. Of course, they got to go to Kansas City. They're playing Baltimore on Christmas. So they've got some big games at the end of the year, but they've got a little bit of time here. They're playing, Chicago, Indianapolis, the Jets, Jacksonville. They've got an opportunity to stockload some victories against some of the, I will call, weaker opponents on their schedule before they get down to the end. But there's a possibility that if they have any injuries, and it goes for every team, if they have some injuries, I think they can overcome injuries at the wide receiver position this year because they're so deep at wide receiver. But again, we don't know what they have in their offensive line this year. They're hoping that they're going to find a good secondary with all the corners that they brought in, both through the draft and free agency and through trades. But I think that Houston will battle for the division lead again this year. And I think that they are definitely going to get, double-digit victories. But, I would not place them higher than maybe third in the AFC behind Kansas City. And then I really like, Cincinnati rebounding with Joe Burrow.
Yeah. So who's the next team?
The next team on the list. Let's see. We did, an AFC. So let's go to NFC. This one here, they did not do, in my opinion, as much as, some of the other teams that we're going to be taking a look at here tonight. But it's the quality that they added and lost that I think really makes the difference. And that team is the Los Angeles Rams.
Fuck the Rams.
So, they lost Jimmy Garoppolo, they lost Carson Wentz, who played about a half a season with them. He came in after Stetson Bennett had his issue. Rumors are that it was alcoholism or whatever. And but he's back with the team. But, they bring in Jimmy Garoppolo to replace Carson Wentz. Wentz ends up as the backup in Kansas City. Royce Freeman out the Boston Scott comes over from Philadelphia. He was kind of overshadowed over the last several years. He's been a solid back for Philadelphia. They had, DeAndre Swift last year, and the year before that it was Miles Sanders. They've been using a lot of, 2, 3, 4 running back, groupings in Philly. And so maybe he'll get a little bit better shot here behind Kieran Williams. But, he'll be battling for the backup spot for sure with third-round running back Blake Corum, who comes in from Michigan. And that's
Boston Scott will be the third back anyway.
Yeah. For me, I know that, you're very high on Blake Corum. And as we talked about, as I started to show off, you look at the guys that they've added. So you got Darius Williams comes in from Baltimore. Tre'Davious White, who has been injured, granted, but they're giving him an opportunity here with the Rams. He is a shutdown corner when healthy. Comes over from Buffalo. Cameron Curl from Washington. You got Colby Parkinson, Jonah Jackson. So they added some quality players, and of course, the one guy that I don't know how I missed this, but the one guy that they're going to miss the most is defensive tackle Aaron Donald. He retired, here this offseason. And so they go out in the first and the second round and add a couple of Florida State guys that are teammates in college. They bring them to the Rams here in the pros, Jared Verse and Brandon Fisk. And they're going to be a dynamic duo on defense.
Oh, for sure.
And this team has battled closely with the 49ers over the last several years. It feels like the Rams, for a long time, it was, screw the picks. We'll pick up guys through trades or whatever. And whoever we just happen to get in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, hopefully they'll fit our system and we can do something with them. And that really worked for the Rams for several years. Now they're back to having some draft picks, and I think they're picking the right guys with those. They're putting in, they've gotten lucky with some of the picks that they have gotten over the last several years that were in the lower rounds. You look at Puka Kanua this last year was a revelation. You team him with Cooper Kupp, who was injured a lot last year. If they're both healthy to start this season, they're going to be dynamite. If they run the ball like they did this last year against the Baltimore Ravens, they add these guys here in Boston Scott, Blake Corum. They team them up and they have a rotation. With Matt Stafford throwing the ball to those guys, if they've got a good offensive line, they added Jonah Jackson here. He's basically going to replace Coleman Shelton. Then look for the Rams to be in contention to make the playoffs again. I don't see them really challenging the 49ers, but they're definitely going to be on their heels, Chris.
Yeah. I think Blake Corum actually has a chance at Rookie of the Year this year. Not saying he's going to get it. I just think he'll have a chance at it. Because I think
he's definitely going to have to beat out Kieran Williams, who played really good last year for the Rams, for that number one spot, if he's going to have any shot at Rookie of the Year.
I think they're going to have pretty similar touches. I think they're going to split because if you go back to Sean McVay when he had a back like Corum, which in Gurley, before Gurley got hurt, LA ran the ball just as much as they threw that ball. He put serious numbers up before Gurley's health went downhill and then come back. Blake Corum is a back that can handle those touches, and he can handle those carries of the season. So I think you're going to see Blake Corum become maybe possibly a workhorse, and then Caleb Williams is going to be the speed guy that bounces the outside runs. But Corum's going to come there and dominate that line and run between those tackles.
Yeah, and you're going to see them. You're going to see them week 1 when they play at Detroit. And Detroit has bolstered their run defense this offseason. And we'll be talking about them over the next couple of weeks. Like that team.
I just want to say sorry to Blake because we're going to fuck him up.
But, I mean, listen, Arizona's not going to be a slouch this year in that division. I think I'm a little concerned about Seattle. I think Seattle, this is going to be one of those, they got a first-year coach. They're going to take a step back a little bit before they rebound and come back strong next year. Because I don't think they've got the quarterback right in Geno Smith. I think he's capable, but, he's not an elite player. They have really good receivers there in Seattle. And, I think they've got a running game, but they're going to have to adapt to his defense. And the defense has been running that, Legion of Boom defense for, so many years in a row that, maybe we'll see them, really do something special because they, have a new defense and it's fresh and it gives them, some energy defensively. But I think it's more likely that they're going to be on a steep learning curve, and it's a team that has not played that defense before, and they're going to run into some trouble early on because they've got a tough schedule. Does Seattle? But the Rams got to play Green Bay, but luckily they get them in Los Angeles. They're going to get Minnesota and Miami in Los Angeles and Philadelphia. So a lot of the teams that are, I would say are really good, they get them at home. They don't have to go on the road. Now, they got to go on the road for Detroit. They got to go on the road for San Francisco, and that'll be on a short week on a Thursday. On the road to New Orleans, I don't think they have anything really to worry about. On the road to the Jets, I guess it really depends on how Aaron Rodgers plays, but that late in the season, there's no guarantee he's going to be healthy. And so, I look at this as really a softer schedule than the other teams we've spotlighted so far.
I do too. They got a couple hard ones, but there are some very winnable games in there.
Yeah, like I said, the teams that are you think of as playoff teams, they're coming to L.A. They don't have to go to them. At home against Minnesota, Miami, Philadelphia, Buffalo, San Francisco. Of course, they play them twice. And the hard one of that group is at San Francisco on the short week.
Yeah. Yeah, their hardest games, I think, are right off the bat, to be 100% honest.
Yeah. You don't know what you're going to get out of Arizona. And, we don't know what we're going to see. I expect Detroit to win and play well, but L.A. got knocked out of the playoffs last year and by Detroit. And Detroit had a lot to prove in that game. And I know we've talked about this before that, it's not a playoff game. There's not so much on the line. Stafford's going to come back to Detroit, and this will be his first chance where it's not everything's on the line. It's just a regular season game. And we've talked before that I think that the Rams have a good chance of going in there and actually winning that game. I know you don't want to hear that,
No. I just want to give Stafford his roses so everybody can shut the fuck up about the Detroit fans and how we treat Stafford in a playoff game. And then kick their ass, send them back to LA, and just keep it moving. That's what I want. That's what we're focused on.
Well, our final team to spotlight tonight is another team that has gone through a lot of change, and you can see that here. That's the Buffalo Bills. And the biggest things are, and I think everybody knows, the wide receiver core and then defense. Buffalo has really taken it on the chin this offseason. Part of it is of their own doing because Stephon Diggs is a malcontent and they wanted to get rid of him. They're taking a huge cap hit because of it. But along those lines, Gabe Davis leaves and goes to Jacksonville. They lose some of their quality depth in Trent Sherfield and Deontay Hardy. And so they just start plucking guys off the street. Now, I like Curtis Samuel, and, of course, they drafted Keon Coleman. I really like him as well. I thought he was a first-round talent from Florida State. But, when you start bringing in Chase Claypool, who has really, flushed out in the last three teams that he's played for, it hasn't worked out for him. Mac Hollins comes in. He has been third or fourth string wide receiver at best, as has Andy Isabella, and so they're just hoping to find maybe a diamond in the rough that wasn't getting enough touches from another team. Offensively, also Mitch Morris was a Pro Bowl caliber center. He's played and, he has given snaps to both Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. his loss will be felt. They bring in Will Clapp, who is a proven starter at center. And, they added Lyle Collins for depth on the line. And so I'm sure that will make Josh Allen feel a little bit better. But, I'm really surprised that we haven't heard him be a little disgruntled this offseason with all his receivers basically leaving. He lost a couple of guys the year before at wide receiver. Now it's like all his guys are gone. I know he still has one dude who is starting to develop this last year. But, yeah, I'm just really surprised that they didn't, that he hasn't said something. He's been real quiet, and I think that the franchise probably appreciates it. But they bring Mitch Trubisky back after he was in Pittsburgh, for a couple of seasons. Kyle Allen's out the door as the backup. Trubisky played well as Josh Allen's backup a couple of years ago when he was there. And so, he knows the system and everything. I think they're going to run the football like they did at the end of last year a lot more effectively, use James Cook out of the backfield, screens, draws, and, take a lot of the pressure off of Josh Allen. But then we get to the defense, Chris, and listen to the names that they lost this offseason. Leonard Floyd, Jordan Phillips, Linville Joseph, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White. I mean, those are Pro Bowl guys all over the line, all over the secondary, and so their defense is decimated this offseason.
Yeah, it's not looking good for Buffalo. I don't even think this team makes the playoffs.
Well, I think that listen, it's going to be tough. I don't believe that the Jets are going to be all that in a bag of donuts. New England is not going to be any good. I think everybody knows that. And so it's still going to be Miami and Buffalo in this division. Miami's got a weak defense, but it's so funny because some of these guys, including Jordan Poyer, went from Buffalo to Miami. And so, they're staying in the division. Buffalo brings in Nicholas Morrow. They got some guys to kind of fill some gaps. Mike Edwards played safety for Kansas City in a part-time role last year. He's a ball hawk. He is a really good player. He won a Super Bowl with the Chiefs. He won a Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so I think that if they give him the opportunity to be a full-time starter, he will be okay back there for them. But the corner situation is, tenuous at best. And then when you look at their schedule, I mean, it's murderer's row. They got at Baltimore. They're at Houston. They got to play Kansas City. They got to play San Francisco. They got to go clear to L.A. to play the Rams. And so, we don't – and, of course, they've got to play Miami. We don't know what we're going to be getting out of Arizona, and we don't know what we're going to be getting out of the Jets. And I have already said, I thought that Tennessee is going to be an improved team. I think that the teams that are the easiest on their schedule right now is they got to play New England, but they don't get them to the end of the year, which could be, if they win those games and they had to have them to get in the playoffs, it'll be fool's gold. It'll be one and done in the playoffs.
Yeah.
You got Seattle and Indianapolis. Those are the two teams that are weak, other than New England. The rest of them, they're going to have to step up defensively. Leslie Frazier took the year off last year, and, the head coach, there in Buffalo was calling plays defensively. I don't know if he's going to do that again this year or if they brought somebody in, to kind of take over so that he doesn't have so much pressure on him and he can oversee the entire team. But we know that the offense played much better in the second half under Joe Brady as the offensive coordinator when he replaced, the previous offensive coordinator there. So, but like you said, I mean, I think that they're going to take a bit of a downward hit this year. Hopefully, they'll get their salary cap readjusted and they'll be back maybe at full force next year. But I don't expect them to be the kind of threat that they have been over the last couple of years in the AFC. At best, they're fourth, maybe fifth team in the AFC this year.
Yeah. I still think they don't make the playoffs, but I mean, you make a good point about the division and the Jets. It really depends on what we find out with the Jets are. But that's if Aaron Rodgers can make it through Monday Night Football again.
We're going to find out early because they're going all the way out to San Francisco in week 1. If they put on a show against the 49ers, they will be serving notice to the league, hey, we're a playoff team, we're for real. But if they go out there and get slaughtered, nobody's going to believe in the Jets until they do something.
That is 100% true.
Well, so those are the spotlights on the teams, that we've got, prepared for this week. Just some of the other news and notes around the league. We talked about, the wide receiver market. A couple of wide receivers have come off the board in the last couple of days. Mecole Hardman has rejoined the Kansas City Chiefs on a 1-year deal. And, this is getting to be the end of the spring football season. And as soon as the UFL has their championship game, I believe it's next week, the next round of free agency will begin because you're going to see a lot of these guys that were in the spring league get invited or sign contracts to come to camp to play it in the NFL, with an opportunity to make teams. And so, we've already seen the Birmingham Stallions are into the championship. I believe San Antonio and St. Louis are playing for the other spot in the final right now. And that may be why we're not getting a whole lot of audience.
It could be.
When I left, it was 16-0 San Antonio in St. Louis. So.
Oh wow! I was kind of rooting for AJ.
Yeah. I wanted to see St. Louis win too, but I also like San Antonio because they got Wade Phillips as the head coach. Nothing against Anthony Beck, but I never saw him as a head coach material. Although they have done well, there when they were in the XFL, last year. And, I don't really have much more to discuss unless you got some news and notes you want to bring up, buddy.
The only thing I was going to bring up is the Lions were supposed to have their last OTA practice tomorrow, but officially they cannot practice because they admitted to violating the league's rule of player contact and OTAs. So I guess they had the rookies.
Detroit Lions are cheaters? What?
I guess we cheated by letting the rookies get in pads and hit each other. I guess that was not allowed in OTAs, but hey, it's fucking football. But I guess they can't.
I'm just picking on you. Yeah, they stayed out longer than they're supposed to. There's supposed to be a limited amount of time according to the collective bargaining agreement, and so they lost another practice that they'll have at the next OTA prior to training camp. And then the thing that I thought that you might want to bring up is the fact that Cam Sutton, who was cut immediately by the Lions because of his possibility of domestic abuse and everything that was going on, re-signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers, a previous team he had been with, this last week.
Yeah.
And, I thought that was interesting. You can make a lot of excuses that, hey, they knew this guy, they think he's a good dude, and maybe he'll end up serving a big long suspension, but they'll have him down the stretch. They're thinking in terms of business rather than personal, which is the way a lot of teams probably should think, but they don't. because they don't want to take the PR hit. But Pittsburgh has real good PR for the most part, and
I
so
mean, let's just be honest. I mean, the dude's lucky. He probably won't even get suspended at this point, for the simple fact that his girlfriend got the charges dropped. She went in there and dropped the charges. So he didn't get charged with the crime. He didn't go to jail. His warrant got ripped up and thrown away. I think he had to go at least turn himself in, and then he walked out like 10 minutes later, and then she dropped the charges. So I mean, he got lucky. You know what I mean? And I don't think the line. And here's the reality, because I know there was a lot of people like. There's a lot of Lions fans actually mad that he lost his job, because a lot of people felt like this could be a case of bullshit from his girlfriend. This might not have happened, etc., and the Lions cut him. Well, guess what? The Lions didn't cut him just because he might get suspended or might get charged. I'm pretty sure the Lions were going to keep him on the roster and see how it played out. But the simple fact was, Cam Sutton was in Detroit when he was wanted by the cops. They asked him to go get some help with the lawyer and turn himself in and take care of the issue and see what plays out. He was in Allen Park in the training facility working out with the personal trainer. He left there and went MIA and stopped communicating with the team. So at that point, the Lions terminated his contract, which the league should probably upheld, and we should save money on his contract for cutting him, because the simple fact of all he had to do was talk to Brad Holmes. All he had to do is communicate with the team, let him know what he was doing, and he would still be in Detroit.
When you don't talk to the team and you don't communicate fully, or you're dishonest with members of management, it's going to cost you your job. That reminds me so much of the Kareem Hunt incident with the Kansas City Chiefs. He was a dynamic player and fit right in with Andy Reid's scheme. He ended up having to go to Cleveland after serving a suspension because he was dishonest with the team. He told them nothing happened. Video surfaced. He clearly lied. They're like, see you later. If you just tell the truth, then you don't make it worse.
Exactly.
It already would have been. And, so, but, we talk about these, things that happen in the off season and who's doing this and who's doing that. I was reading an article on Facebook on Football Forever, and it answered a question to me: how come, Xavier Howard hasn't been picked up by a team? He's a really good corner, and it turns out that the reason that he hasn't been picked up is probably because he supposedly sent a boy sexually explicit contact of his mother, or content of his mother, because she refused to get an abortion. He wanted her to get an abortion and she wouldn't get an abortion. So he sent, some content that he had of him and her together to the Sun, which is crazy to me, if he did that. And so he is being sued for sexual misconduct. And that may be how come he hasn't been picked up by a team, not necessarily because of his price tag. And then, the only other things that I have is that we got several players that have decided to retire before going into the next season. Steve Nelson, a cornerback who's played for Pittsburgh, Houston, Kansas City, he's out. Corey Linsley, who was a Pro Bowl center when he played in Green Bay and also with the Chargers, he was cut earlier this last week. And, he's probably going to be retiring as well. And so we've got, a few players that are deciding to retire. The one that really surprises me, and I think it's just a matter of an inability to focus on their job, and that is Darren Waller. Darren Waller was with the Oakland/Las Vegas Raiders, and he was married at the time to a basketball player who played for the Las Vegas Aces. And so him and her were together, and everything's hunky-dory and great. And then he gets traded to the New York Giants, which really hurt his relationship, according to things I've heard, is that it hurt his relationship with her because they weren't around each other anymore. She is a big supporter of him as far as staying away from the drugs and alcohol and, things that had bothered him in his past. He goes to New York, and I'm not saying that he started doing these things again, but it really hurt their marriage. They ended up getting a divorce, and he has decided to go ahead and retire after only being in New York for 1 year. And so it's really disappointing to me because I thought he was a great player when he played with Vegas. He got hurt last year with the Giants and didn't show what he could really do. And it feels like that the Raiders got a real sweet deal by sending him out of there. They got a good draft pick for a player that ended up not playing well or producing well for the Giants. And I hope that, this is just a situation where he needs to, take some time, get himself straightened out, and then possibly return to the league maybe next year. But, as of right now, Darren Waller has decided to retire.
Yeah. It's sad to see, I think, anybody go through that, especially because it's kind of crazy for him to retire right now. And hopefully everything's good, and hopefully he just wants a mental break and everything's all right with him.
But that's all I've got, buddy. A short show. Sad we didn't have as much interaction as we normally do. I know that Ron, his best friend, passed away. He is up in Illinois for the week, instead of being at home in New Mexico, visiting the friend's family and, going to have a funeral and everything. And so that's sad there. Shout out to Ron. Hope you're okay, buddy.
Our prayers are with you, buddy.
I know we've been kind of hit and miss with the show, but I'll try to do as good a job as I can to be prepared again for next weekend. If we're here this weekend, which hopefully we will be, and you won't be, crazy busy with the, lawn and everything.
I should be better next week.
Teams. We'll spotlight 4 more teams, and we'll talk about more news and notes of the offseason in the NFL.
Sounds good. And I just want to apologize to everybody because the last couple of weeks were on me. It was just a big life adjustment because, like I said, when I started this company a month ago, I was not expecting to be this busy at all. I was expecting to have to work my regular job, cut grass after I got off of work, a couple houses here and there until I got steady, and boom, now I'm here with 22. I just finally hired a helper too. So I think it should be a lot better. I shouldn't be walking around like a zombie all weekend and stuck working almost every day. So I'm happy for that.
Well, before we sign off, I want to show off my shirt I bought on Amazon. I got Johnny 5. Hey, Laser Lips, your mama was a snowblower.
That's a good shirt.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Hope you enjoyed listening to us talk football. Next time, be sure to tune in. Basically 7 Central, 8 o'clock Eastern, Sunday nights during the off season. And then we'll do Tuesday nights once the season begins so we can review the weekends each week of the football season.
Sounds good. Everybody have a good night, and we'll see you back here next week, next Sunday, 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central. So if you haven't done it yet, go to Fourth and Go Fourth and Go Sports on Facebook, like and follow, or follow me or David. Or if you go to the comments, our link to YouTube, Twitch, and everything's in the comments. Go like and follow us there too as well. Have a good night, David. Later, guys.
Thanks a lot.